All right, so we are going to be doing section 4.2, the standard form of the quadratic function. And as we discussed a little bit before I started recording, the essential question that we're kind of trying to figure out is what's better, vertex form, standard form? Are they both good? Is one better than the other, or do maybe the standard form have a lot of things that maybe aren't that great? So we're going to say that those are disadvantages, or maybe the vertex form has more disadvantages. So we'll kind of go through today's lesson. Tomorrow, kind of talk about it a little bit more. But that is our essential question. What are the advantages and disadvantages of using vertex and standard form for a quadratic function? Now, we did also have a little bit of time to write this stuff down, the standard form of a quadratic. You will notice the standard form looks different than the vertex form. I'm just going to kind of write the vertex form for us over here. This is what the vertex form looked like. I'll erase it that way in case anybody looks up the notes later. They don't think it's two different things. But you can see the difference, right? One is kind of like factored, and the other one is kind of just written out like a normal polynomial. So the vertex form on the right side, we use it to find our vertex really easily. That was the HK. We used our A term on the vertex form, the one on the right side, for our slope. Today, we're going to be using y equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, this is what they call the standard form of a quadratic function. And you notice I kind of color-coded the A and the B and the C because those have meaning, okay? The B doesn't have as much meaning as A and C, but you will see it a little bit later. A is the amplitude, okay? So with the A value, that should be in the very front, right next to the x squared term. And it says if A is positive, it's going to open up. That means that your parabola is going to look like this. Okay? And if A is negative, it's going to open down. So your parabola will look like this. All right, so sorry about that. I had to pause it because the pen stopped responding. So there you go, opening down, right? If A is negative, it's opening down. Okay? The other part that was important for me for you guys to see was the y-intercept, okay? The very last number, the number that doesn't have any letters on it, that's going to be your y-intercept. So if the c was like a 5, that means that's where it's crossing the y-axis at positive 5. If the c is a negative 2, that means at negative 2 it's going to be crossing the y-axis, okay? So I put right there, this is where the graph passes the y-axis. I'm hearing a phone, so if you still have your phone, guys, you know where it should be. Go ahead and put it over there, unless that's your phone, I don't know. But all right, so here we go. So I'm going to start off with the very first example, and you guys should have your computer out by now. If you don't have your computer out and ready, you can always look next to a neighbor, but I'll do it up on the board so you guys can see it as well. So the first example, and you're going to notice a lot of these are pretty easy. Just the last example is a little bit more involved, okay? But most of these are pretty easy. It says, does the parabola open up or down? That's all I want to know. Does it open up or down? Okay, so I gave us a lot of space just because of the notes, right? I want the notes not to have a bunch of problems in there for us. But what would you say for part A? Does it open up or down? It opens up, right? Because why? What's positive? The A value, right? So I'm going to put since A, and remember, you guys don't have to write this explanation down if you don't want to, but the answer, yes, but I'm putting this there for the notes, right? Since A is equal to 2, which means that it's positive, whoops, I don't know why I put a 0 there, which means that it's positive, then it opens up, okay? So I'm going to put that in a box, just that's our answer. But that's the reason why it's going to open up, right? A is equal to 2. What about B? It opens down because A is negative 1, right? So since A is negative 1, meaning that it's negative, then it opens down. All right? So, all right, that's not too bad, right? That's not too bad. Yes, there are homework problems like that on your homework, so when you see them, be happy. They're pretty easy to do. Now, I'm going to move on to example 2, and then we're going to use our computers at that point, okay? You're going to notice example 2, they're the same problems we did for example 1, but I'm just going to ask you a different question. And then we're going to use Desmos to check. All right? So example 2 says, name the y-intercept of the parabola. So even though they are the same questions, I'm asking you a different thing for them, right? So same questions, a is equal to a is y equal to 2x squared minus 8x plus 1. And b is y equal to negative x squared plus 6x minus 2. And they want us to name the y-intercept of the parabola. Which letter pertain to the y-intercept? C, right? So again, I don't know where that phone is. Anybody want to put it up? Silence it? But so it's the C value, right? So name the y-intercept of the parabola. Look at part A. C is equal to what? Positive 1. That's it. It's just that last part right here. Okay? Again, it's easy enough. Nothing too hard to do. We don't have to move around numbers or anything like that. What about part B? What's C equal to? Negative 2. So there we go. We have that. So I want you guys, you should be at desmos.com hopefully by now. If not, go ahead and go to desmos.com. So mine is already set up. I just got to go over to it. Remember, it's desmos.com. If you don't have a computer available, just kind of look at your neighbors. But you're going to go to desmos.com, click on Graphing Calculator in case you're not sure, maybe you don't use this enough. When you go to desmos.com, it's right here, okay? The graphing calculator on the left side says, let's learn together. So I just want you guys to see what it is that you're actually finding answers to. So let's start off with the first equation that we wrote, y equal to 2x squared minus 8x. So go ahead and type it in there, plus 1. So when we did example 1, for the very first part, part A, which way was it opening? For example 1, part A? Up. So you can see right here it's opening up. And what was the y-intercept for it? 1. And look, I can touch that. Let me make this a little bit thicker here. So you can see right here, it's touching 1, right there, it's telling you on the y-axis, right? So it's opening up, just like we said in example 1. And in example 2, we said it's crossing the y-axis at 1. Right? So it's just verifying your solutions. When you guys are doing this on your homework, get on Desmos. It doesn't take long. Type out your equation. Check that you're getting it right. Okay. The other equation, part B for example 1 and example 2, was y equal to negative x squared plus 6x minus 2. Let me get rid of this one. So which way was that one supposed to open according to our answer in part 1? Down. Down. And what was my y-intercept? And there it is, right? You can see it. All you gotta do is touch it, right? If they were to ask you what the x-intercepts are, you would just touch where the x-axis is, right? But that's a whole different thing that we haven't done yet. But you can see your y-intercept is right here at 0, negative 2. C value is this negative 2. Okay? So pretty easy so far, right? Easy to check. All right, so let's move on to something that's a little bit more complicated, because that was kind of like the easy part of the lesson. Now we're going to go into definitions. Okay, a couple things that you can get from your standard form. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this for about 2 minutes, and then we'll get to explaining this. Okay, so the axis of symmetry. So you guys remember how we talked about the axis of symmetry for Friday, right? Does anybody remember the formula for the axis of symmetry from Friday? I'll give you a hint. It's x equals, it was one letter, h. X equals h, right? It was just x equals h, and I told you that's going to be a super easy equation, and it was easy because vertex form makes it simple for us. Notice how this one is different, right? So again, just color coding, you can see the b value is going to be the b value from your original equation, right? So the green portion and the red one for your first the coefficient of a. But the axis of symmetry here is x equal to negative b over 2a. And if you guys remember from Friday, the axis of symmetry is this invisible line that cuts the parabola vertically in half, right? left and right sides are identical. So we're going to have to find the axis of symmetry again, but using this formula. You're going to get the information from the formula, or from the equation, right? The A term and the B term. Okay, so remember I told you the B term doesn't have a lot of meaning, but we do use it for something later on. So this is when we're going to use it. And then to find our vertex, with vertex form, it was really easy. All we had to write was HK, right? HK, that's it. Here, we first have to find the axis of symmetry, and then we're going to plug that number, plug the axis of symmetry into the equation to find your y value. So it's a lot more work. So would you consider that an advantage or a disadvantage? Yeah, it's a disadvantage, right? It's a little bit more work. That's why a lot of people like vertex form over standard form, because everything's kind of just there. It's all there for you to see and say, I can do that, I can see it. This one requires a little bit more work, but of course, not every equation is in vertex form. I mean, you can make it like that if you want to complete the square, and we're going to do that at some point. But a lot of people don't like completing the square, not even my calculus kids. They're always like, oh, I have to do that again. Right? So, all right, let's go into some of these examples then. So finding the axis of symmetry and the vertex of the parabola. I'm going to have you guys do two things at once. And then after that, we're going to do one where we got to put everything together and graph it. And then I'll give you guys your homework to try work starting it off in class. All right, so to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex of this parabola, we're going to start off, notice vertex requires me to find the axis of symmetry first, right? Those are the two steps we need. Find the axis of symmetry and then use it in your equation, right? So I got to find the axis of symmetry first. So I'm just going to kind of put A, O, S, okay? Axis of symmetry, X is equal to negative B over 2A. All right. Now that minus is important. Make sure you always put it there because it can change the symbols or the signs on some of the numbers. What is my B term? 4. And then 2 times, what's my A term? Negative 2. Thank you. So we have X equal to negative 4 over negative 4. So that's equal to 1. There's my axis of symmetry. I'm going to kind of put a little box around that one because that one's finished. Now let me go over to Desmos just to kind of look at it. Okay, I'm going to go over to Desmos and I'm going to type in X equal to 1. Does that look like it cuts it right down the middle? Yeah. And check it out. You see how there's a little dot right here where the purple line crosses the green line? What is that dot called? That's my vertex, right? So let's get a sneak peek at what my answer better be. According to this, it's 1, 1. So if I don't get a 1, 1 on my answer for part, the next part in my example, I did something wrong. Okay? So let's take a look at that one. So let's go into part B of this, or I guess you could say second part of this, the vertex. Now this is what I always used to do when I was learning it. Okay, this is what I used to put on my work. I used to put a point on the side because I already know one of the values, right? My axis of symmetry was 1. We solved for that, right? X equals 1. So all I have to do is plug that number into my equation and I should be good to go. So here we go. Y equal to negative 2. And again, I'm just going to use some color changes here so where I plug it in, you guys know what's happening. Plus 4 times 1 minus 1. So the blue is where the number was plugged in, right? That's where the x's were. So 1 squared, well, that's just 1. And then 4 times 1, that's 4, minus 1. Negative 2 times 1, that's negative 2, plus 4, minus 1. What's negative 2 plus 4 minus 1? That's 1. So that answer goes here. And wasn't that the point that I was supposed to get? Yeah, so I'm good. I know I did it right. Is this like really hard to do? Is it a little annoying? A little. Okay. Because you think back about Friday and you're like, man, Friday I just had to pick the numbers, HK, right from the equation. Like I didn't have to do any work. And this one, I have to do work. So it's a little annoying. Oh, it's a little annoying that we might have to do a bunch of extra work. Right? So that's okay. Oh, and just we already saw it just to so you guys can double check it. But I mean, we already checked it out. Desmos verifies right there. 1, 1 is my vertex. The line does cut perfectly down it, right? So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these for now, and we're going to do one last example, and then you guys are going to get your homework. So this is the big one, and I think you guys have 4 examples on this on your homework. I'm going to pause the video to give you guys a little bit of time to write this out. All right, so final example, example number 4. It says identify the A, B, and C of each equation. So that should be pretty easy, right? Just kind of write them down. Also, name the axis of symmetry, the vertex, the y-intercept, and direction that it opens, and then graph it. So there's a lot of stuff. The only ones that really do take a little bit of work are the vertex and the axis of symmetry. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. All right. So let's go ahead and start off with the A, B's, and C's. So we have y equal to x squared plus 2x minus 3. Okay. So y equal to x squared plus 2x minus 3. What is my A term for this one?
1.
1, right? So that's right here. So 1. My B term? 2. And my C? All right. So we have my 3 terms right there, A, B, and C. Okay? So again, that's pretty easy to do. Axis of symmetry and vertex are a little bit harder, so I'm going to kind of hold off. What's my y-intercept?
Negative 3.
-3. It's my C value, right? And which way does it open? Up. Thank you. So it opens up. So I pretty much finished this whole problem besides the graphing, but I do have to do the axis of symmetry, which is the part that takes a little while. So here we go. Axis of symmetry. X is equal to negative B over 2A. So negative B, we already know that's a 2. We wrote that down. Over 2 times A, which is a 1. We wrote that down earlier as well. So this comes out to negative 2 over 2. So it's negative 1. So I'm going to write X equal to negative 1. Okay? Now for the next part, I got to find my vertex. To find my vertex, I'm going to use my axis of symmetry, and I'm going to plug it into my equation, and from there, I'll be able to find my y value. Okay, so remember, the vertex is going to be a point. Okay, so I'm going to kind of write it down here. I'm going to put my negative 1 right there for vertex. Okay? I just realized that noise I've been hearing is probably coming from here, but I'm just hearing it that way when I'm looking. So vertex is negative 1. I already know that. I need to find my y value. Let's plug it into the equation. So vertex, negative 1 comma something, y equal to, and I'm going to plug in the negative 1 where the x value is. So here we go. Negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 3. So negative 1 squared, remember, if you put this in a calculator, it's either going to give you 1 or negative 1, depending on whether you put parentheses. So make sure you guys put parentheses. This is going to be 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 minus 3. So 1 minus 2 minus 3 is negative what? Negative 4. So I'm going to put negative 4 there. So I have everything I need. Okay? I have my A term, my B term, my C term. And in order to graph it, I need my vertex, my y-intercept, and which way it opens. That's basically it. Just vertex and y-intercept and which way it opens. So that's why I'm going to go all the way to this point, because those are the 3 things I really need. My vertex, my y-intercept, and which direction it opens. So I'll give you a couple seconds just to create a little graph for you. Just so you guys know, on your homework, if I'm correct, they're going to be giving you guys these graphs as a multiple choice option. So they're going to graph them for you, 4 different options. You get to pick which one is the correct one. Okay. I will recommend that you don't write them on Desmos, bless you. I will recommend that you don't go to Desmos and put them in first. Try to figure out which one's right, then go to Desmos and check it and see if you got the right answer, okay? Because or else the other way, you're just going to be given the answer and you're going to look for the picture that matches, right? So try doing it the opposite way. You do first, then check Desmos. So here we go. My vertex is at -1, -4. So -1, -4 is right there. Okay? And then my y-intercept is -3. So I'm going to use a piece right here. Now you guys remember with parabolas, if a point is on the right side, you copy it to the other side because it's symmetric, right? It's symmetric. So I'm going to get that red point and put it over here as well, on both sides of the vertex. Okay, and then from there just sketch it. So you're just going to get your lines and make sure you draw like a curve, and that's it. Later on we're going to learn where it's supposed to cross the x-axis exactly so we can do it perfectly, but for now we're just sketching it. Okay, and there's your picture. So I'm going to go over to Desmos. Let's just double check to make sure this makes sense. Whoops. The equation was, let me find it. It was x squared. Was it plus 2x? Yeah, and then -3, right? All right. So does that kind of look like the one you drew in your notes? Here's your y-intercept, your vertex, right? This point right here is a copy pretty much of, I'm trying to see if I can get it to line up nicely. Give me a second. Sometimes it's kind of hard with if I don't have a mouse. There it is, right? Those are the 3 points that we had, and then you just put them through, graph them with your pencil, and you're good, all right? So that's what you guys have to do today for homework. Let me pass it out for you guys so you can get started on it.